Do that. Okay. All right. So actually, let me pray. Lord Jesus, thank you for those that are here. Thank you that they're on time. As we discuss this topic, it is a sensitive topic in some ways, but I pray that it is one that can be enlightening and also a way for us to be united with our fellow brothers and sisters who may not look like us, who may not eat the same food, who may not even talk like us, or in some ways even don't even think like us, even though we all speak English, Lord, in the U.S., Lord, especially for this topic that I will be addressing from this angle. But may it be a time in which we can ask questions if there are questions and just discuss things really just frankly and openly. And help me to present all like 60 slides in the next hour. So we pray this, Lord Jesus, in your name. Amen. All right. So biblical racial reconciliation. That topic I'll get to it in just a second, but that's what we're going to talk about today: theology, race. I don't remember to press start. Let me do that. Okay, record. That was recording, right? Okay. All right. The reason why this topic is on my mind, it's been on my mind, is because being in San Francisco, it's very, very different. I grew up in a suburb north of Seattle. So it was kind of like here in the sense that I was a minority, okay? I was like one of maybe like 3 Asian students in my grade probably. And so it was different than being in San Francisco. If you've never been and you're gonna go, let me know, okay? Because I will also help you eat at all the good places, go see all the beautiful sights, and not get your car broken into, okay? Because that does happen. My sister's car got broken into, our friends, that happens. And so that's part of living in San Francisco. But I love the weather, the political climate. I do not like that one. But yeah, we might hit some of that stuff as we discuss this. So let me first, because some of you I have not seen yet, because you guys are probably too young. So let me just jump to the slide first. So this is my family. So I'm over there. This is me. That's my wife. These are my 2 boys. That's my parents. My mom making a heart shape. Middle sister just married him May 3rd, and this was taken May 4th. This is my youngest sister. That's her husband. And then they have Ksenia and Asa. This is my son, Athanasius. You can call him Thanos for short. Okay, this is Ignatius. You can call him Nacho. Okay, and that's because those are just words that we learn because other people also engage. Like Nacho comes from Ignatius because Ignatius in Spanish is Ignacio. Okay, and then I had a church member. She went to learn Spanish, and she went to Central America. She said, "Oh, in Peru they say Nacho for Ignatius." I'm like, "Oh, very cool." And then when we do stuff like in California, we do stuff like Latinos or Mexican, and then all of a sudden, the kids will tell their dad, "Hey, Dad, there's a kid named Nacho," and then he looks like, "That's Nacho? Like what? This is Nacho?" Because he's expecting a little Mexican kid, right? And so it's just interesting as we engage with different cultures. That's what we see, and even for my family, it was like I even get it from my 2 sisters. Like you had to marry a Chinese, right? Because then they had to go frontier in marrying somebody who's white, and I didn't set the standard, so to speak. I set a higher standard. No, it's just she's the one. She's the one she's the one. Yeah. No, I love my brothers. Oh, I'm learning because he's just been less than a month is my brother-in-law. So it's an interesting, it's part of America, right? We are going to intermarry perhaps with people who are not Chinese, because if you're not in a Chinese dominant area, that's just what happens. That's what my sisters did. Okay, I want to play a song. Okay, has anybody heard of DC Talk? It's dating myself. Okay, have you heard of the Jesus Freak album? It's old, okay? But I want you to listen to the lyrics, and I've also put the lyrics up on the screen. We'll do it as soon as this song starts. There we go. Is that the max? We might not have time to play the whole thing. But it's punny. What's an epidermis? Skin. For the human race. Okay, we'll stop there for time. But even back in the 90s, they are already addressing, as Christians, as originally a rap group, now a little more rock, this topic of race, skin. For myself growing up, like, or even at school, I was taught you don't say white. What are we supposed to say? Caucasian, right? You don't say black, you say African American. Okay, and then let me see. Then COVID happened for me. I mean, it happened for all of us. But let's see, where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. Then COVID happened, and then I did actually talk to some black pastors, and I asked them, "Is it actually African American or black?" And he says, "Black." I'm like, "Okay," because I've been taught growing up the whole life, don't say black, it's offensive. And he's like, "But I am black, I'm a mixed." This pastor actually, in fact, he had the trouble with a light complexion of skin, but he's still black. And so one day he said he ran back home. He said, Mommy, the kids are saying I'm not black, they're saying I'm white because my skin tone is higher. I mean, it's lighter. And then so he's like, yeah. And then the same thing happened to his kids. I'm like, why didn't you tell your kids? Okay, because his kids are also lighter tone. Like, we're butterscotch. We're not black. And so even just the skin tone, some blacks, if they're darker skin, they can even look at other blacks negatively, depending on if it's lighter or if it's darker. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And the weird thing is he has blue eyes. But a little bit of that. Like, do you understand that when you hear a black person and you're watching like football and it's like McDermott or something. Okay, Mick, where does the last name with a mix come from? What country? Ireland, Scotland, right? But the dude is black. What's going on there? I think you guys might know. You're in Virginia, right? So we're in Virginia. Something about slavery, right? And then so chances are he comes from a family descended from slaves who adopted the last name of the slave owner. So even when I'm watching football, like, ooh, I see, like, they have some history with slavery because their last name is not, it's a European last name. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy, but that's what I learned a little bit. Oh, I got ahead of myself. Here's three things that I want you to encourage as you engage with others, because I thought being in America, I knew everything about like America, not everything, but just like I understood that I didn't really have much to learn more about American culture. And then when I started engaging with blacks, then I'm like, and I use black because that's what the pastor said. And so I was like, there's like black people, black culture is so close and yet so far. Like we're in some of it at some times. And it just kind of startled me that there was so little that I understood. Like we had one person here was saying, like, the question was, what holiday do you like, right? And one person said July 4th. And then I had another black pastor, Dr. Earl, and he said when he was a kid, because he's old, he's like 70 or 80, we were not allowed to go and celebrate July 4th. That's not our day of freedom. What day is it? Now it's become in the news. Juneteenth. So even though he wanted to go out and say, oh, look at the fireworks, he was told by grandma, stay in the house, you don't go out. And I was like, is this the America I know? This is crazy, but this is stories that we're told. So active listening, this is important, okay? Lean in and listen, okay? Asians are pretty good at listening, okay? But like, try to listen a little more, be active when you, to try to understand what is the story being told. And that a lot of black culture, when they go harken back to like slavery, sometimes they're using history as a point, and sometimes, oh, dude, I already know it, but pay attention to how they're using the story and narrative. Oops. Okay. And then how do we process the world around us and apply our theological benefits to it, beliefs to it, shaping our own unique hermeneutic. So that's just, theology jargon for how do you look at the world theologically and then apply it. And then so another thing, the second point is as we do that, that's really theory and praxis. Okay, the easy way to remember the word praxis is to say practice. Okay, so there's a theory, an idea, right? Like some of you guys understand what theory is, like an idea, like in science, like, does this work, right? You take that theory and you try to apply it and see, does this make sense? Or otherwise I'll adjust my theory, okay? Like stereotypes, I was told stereotypes are bad, but then in a way it's like, no, sometimes they're good because there's a little wisdom in what you're seeing are patterns. But then of course you be open enough for somebody to break that stereotype. For myself, my parents are from Hong Kong. And so you would assume that I speak Cantonese, which I do. Okay. All right. But I was in seminary. And I had some Taiwanese girls come up to me and ask me, where are your parents from? Hong Kong. Oh, you're a Hong Konger. I'm like, no, I'm American. Right? I don't think like a Hong Konger. I've heard some of the songs, but I listen to American music, American pop, actually like grunge and heavy metal, because I'm from Seattle and that's the Seattle sound that I grew up listening to, plus Christian music, colored people, and DC talk, but it's not the same. And what happened though is I actually spent 3 years in Japan, and we found a Chinese school in Japan. So I studied Mandarin for 2.5 years. So I surprised those girls from Taiwan because they started talking to each other in Mandarin. And then I responded to them. And it's like, 你为什么可以讲国语? And I'm kind of like, 我为什么不能讲国语? Right? And it's like, because I know it, and I know it. But it's those implications that they just assumed. Like they already assumed wrong from the very beginning. Right? I'm not even from Hong Kong. My parents are. And so, but I feel for what's going on in China. So there is a connection there. But yeah, how do we interact with global events, news, societal changes? Like when they have like the umbrella movement, I think it was called, right? And stuff going on. I just feel for it. I still have some relatives in Hong Kong. It's like, oh, what's going to happen in Hong Kong as mainland China, as the CCP continues to just control? It's a very painful handover, it feels. But it's supposed to happen during the 50 years. Yeah, how can we engage with neighbors who differ from us in appearance, language, or lifestyle? Here's another application. On my block, I can talk to only 2/3 of the people on my block. I can speak English, Cantonese, Mandarin, a little bit of Japanese, but that's not necessary. I don't speak Spanish. There are neighbors on my block I cannot talk to. I can just say, oh, hola, bueno, buenos dias, and that's about it, because they only speak Spanish. And they're not just from Mexico, they're from Latin America, all these different countries. And so it's just so that's my next one. I'm going to learn on Duolingo is Spanish, so that I can engage, because I want to understand more. Because even this professor that I'll tell you about a little later, he pointed out, dude, he was eating Mexican food, and then someone who's Asian was like, oh, these tacos are like the ones your mom made, right? But he's not from Mexico. They don't eat tacos, right? And so he's like, wait, what? And then because they eat pupusas or something else. And so it's just even those little differences is a very major difference. But from our point, even from my point of view, I want to learn more because I want to understand their context. Okay, and so how can we engage? That's tough, but if you know a language, or think about how can you engage with people, because we know our culture, right? We know how grandpa and grandma are going to act, or an auntie and uncle that's not really blood related. We just know we're supposed to do certain things. I'm looking, oh, everybody ate all their food on their plate, good Chinese kids or adults, right? It's just, that's, we know, but then we see others. Or here's the funny one. We invited a family who are Mexican background over during the solar eclipse. And so they came in the house, and I see my son, he's 8 years old. Oh, what's wrong? She keeps walking in the house with shoes on. And I'm like, calm down, calm down. But they're not used to it. They're used to just walking in the house with shoes, right? It's only Asians where we're like, But then I'm like, just calm down, calm down. The proper, I mean, Asians would know, take off your shoes. But in San Francisco, it's weird. Some actually don't. But everywhere else, it's, yeah, I do, of course, and because my son's so upset. And then, let's see, yeah, so 3, unity among fellow Christians, the love of Christ. That's where seek to be unified in Christ, even in our differences. And I'll explain that a little more about this one blood thing, which is the book right there. And how can we foster unity and understanding within our faith community? Because really, I think most of us are Baptists, but I do engage with those who aren't Baptists at times, and it's often trying to see, where do we stand together? How can we still engage like the lost for Christ? And because we all believe we need to go share the gospel. We might differ in how we view baptism. Even this Wednesday, I was in a gathering with pastors, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they had said, okay, for Pentecost Sunday, we want all the churches to try to emphasize getting baptized on Pentecost Sunday." And then the one pastor was like, "Yeah, so I baptized one person, then I had to go and then I changed out of my baptism clothes, and then all of a sudden the family showed up, we want to get baptized. So I had to change back into my baptism clothes, and then baptize them, and then change out of it, and then I'm getting ready to go, oh, I'm pastor, another family. Okay, so I have to go back, and then and then I'm just like, well, first off, did you even talk to them about what baptism actually means and go through a class on faith? But for them, it's like, oh, if they feel called to be baptized, they get baptized. Like, okay, that's how they do it. That's how they do it. So sometimes there will be differences, because I prefer to try to help people understand before they get baptized, not just, oh, you want to get baptized, done, and then where do you go? And that's happened. I heard a youth pastor, I think somewhere in Lodi, so it's kind of east of San Francisco, maybe like south of Sacramento. And then he had baptized at least 200 youth. And so then the guy in the California Southern Baptist Convention who oversees youth ministry goes over and checks it out. And when he shows up, there's like 10 kids. And he's like, wait, I thought you baptized 200 kids. Like, yeah, my job is to baptize. That's it. It's like, no, your job is not just to baptize. Right? It's to help them continue to grow in their faith. And so sometimes, so that's where I'm like, okay, let's make sure they understand what baptism is and what it means to follow Christ. It's not just you're baptized and see ya. All right. So this book, actually, let me read this. It's in the book, last chapter. When I saw you from afar, this is an African proverb. When I saw you from afar, I thought you were a monster. When you got closer, I thought you were just an animal. When you got even closer, I saw that you were a human. But when we were face to face, I realized that you were my brother. Okay. So this man has been speaking. He's a Christian, but when you read about his testimony, it's gut-wrenching, because he's dealt with civil rights movement. He's like, my brother fought for the U.S. in World War II, then comes back to the U.S. and is killed by a police officer. And it's like, so what do we do with that? That's tough. But for us, or even the talk, let me ask that for a question. What is the talk in Asian cultures? Well, what do your parents usually tell you? This is what you need to do as you become an adult. What are okay, save money. What else? Are you supposed to just what? So how do you earn the money? Go to college. What else? When do you get married? Right after high school? No. Okay, right? Like you've probably done some years of. So that's the Chinese talk, or the Asian talk, right? You want to build up a foundation. But have some of you heard of what the talk is amongst blacks? How to act around cops when you get pulled over. When I learned that, I was like, I've done it the wrong way. When you get pulled over, if you're black, okay, take out the keys, put it on the dashboard, hands at 10 and 2. Everything is yes or no, sir. Did any of our parents teach us that? Because we don't need it. But you need it if you're black, because here's what happens. You don't do that, the story is from a black mom or dad. I don't want the police officer to come and say you're dead. Because you interacted, scared the police officer, boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's still maybe not a boom, boom, boom. But Dr. Earl, he says that he knows several police chiefs in the Bay Area. One police chief is driving down the highway. He's a police chief in this area. Gets pulled over. Highway patrol is standing there. License and registration. Why are you pulling me over? License and registration, sir. Why are you pulling me over? License and registration. Okay, he pulls it out, gives it to him. Chief, it's you. Again, why are you pulling me over? He was pulled over for being black and driving a luxury car. We're never going to experience that. But that just happened sometime before COVID because we're talking about it during COVID. So that's some of the crazy things that we get to kind of avoid and ignore because we don't have the same skin tone. And so that's why it's so important that we understand our black brothers and sisters because they are there. Now, of course, we'll talk about AAPI and some of the other stuff too. Okay, but right now, so the black and white, that's where we start off with. And then let me get a little more. So this is my director of mission. So he's kind of like the pastor to the pastors or the churches in our area. I'm going to Atlanta. And so he's a mentor. He and his wife are mentors to my wife and myself. There's actually a lady who's sitting right here. And the funny thing is, we're just jiving, chatting, and she kept looking back and then finally she's like, do you two know each other? It's like, yeah, we do. It's like, oh, you seem like you must know each other. But she was kind of surprised that an Asian guy and a black guy are friends. Now, do you guys have any black friends? How well do you know them? Have you been to their house? Have you asked them, like, why do you guys do this? Have you gone to those deeper questions of like, I just want to learn. I just noticed that you guys kind of do this, but maybe I'm wrong, right? Be real with them, but just say like, and that goes back to that lean in and listen. Like, like I asked my neighbor across the street, like, I just noticed like blacks seem to not drive Toyota Corollas and Honda Civics, but they're driving Nissan Sentras. Like, I don't get it. And then he's like, you're right. We do. I don't know why either. And then so just little things like that, where it's like, I'm not trying to be prejudiced or racist. I see patterns, and I'm asking if it's a real pattern or not, because I'm curious. And he's like, but you're right. And he didn't even notice it himself. Okay, so it's things like that where if you can find some, and of course it can be difficult. Some people will be like offended and like, okay, but hopefully as Christian brothers and sisters, okay, find out they're Christian, and then you can talk about it, different questions that you might have. Yeah, so talk about COVID, Black Lives Matter. That's when we, this was actually even during the time for me. I remember this day very well. It was, I had to go out, move my car for street cleaning, and I thought the world was going to end. But it was just a bunch of fires in California that turned the sky this color at 8 a.m. in the morning. So it was very scary. So I thought the world was going to come to an end. But then I'm talking with these brothers and sisters. So we were on Zoom. That's Dr. Earl Crawford right there. I'm up there with a little goatee. And this is actually John Perkins. So he's been with John Lewis. So John Lewis died a few years ago, and he was also a proponent of civil rights. Perkins has also been speaking about civil rights. So in this book, it addresses the questions of things that I was reading, and I'm like, I didn't know that about American history. And it was astonishing. Some of the stuff was like, oh, I've never heard that. But he describes how the Bible has been used to push certain, I guess, theologies that oppressed black people. They would say like, oh, like the son of Adam, like Ham, he was a darker skin color and enslaved and stuff like that. And they twist. The Bible can be twisted. So the book talks about how do we come together to address certain things? How do we speak up? During this time, I even went on my first protest, okay? But it was amongst Christians. So I was like, okay, it should be safe. We're not going to loot and burn any buildings, okay? But it's like, I wanted to lean in and listen, like, what's going on? And actually, even before that, one of those books, I think it might have been when I got it at Urbana, Ethnic Blends, I think might have come out of there when I went. I went to Urbana in like 2016, and one of the speakers, black female professor at UC Santa Barbara, she told this funny story about how she herself, being black, was at a black church, but her pastor was a white pastor at a white church, and the pastors were good friends, but they noticed none of their congregation knew each other, and their congregation just stuck with black, white stuck with white. So the pastor's like, why don't we get our congregations to meet up together? We're all Christians after all. Let's be united. So they set up in the best way possible. Everybody had to buy tickets. They show up to this gathering, and so the professor, she got there like 10 minutes late. She walks in, and it's like a middle school dance, except instead of the boys on one side and the girls on one side, it was the blacks on one side and the whites on one side. And so she comes in, it's like, this is strange. So she goes to one side and says, hey, how come you're not, why are you guys all on this side? Oh, we didn't think they wanted to talk to us. Okay. Goes to the other side. Why are you guys on this side? Oh, we didn't think they wanted to talk to us. And she's like, hey, everybody, you actually even bought a ticket to this event. Go find your friend, right? We're all Christians. What are you doing? Oh, we're afraid. Afraid of what? Right? We're all Christians. Okay, so that made me think, oh yeah, like we are Christians. We need to be united. Okay, we might be colored people, but we're part of the human race. And that's what he says. Like, we got to be careful how we say race. So I try to avoid using the word race except for human race. But we're ethnic groups. Okay? But it was through the whole racism of the South to say, oh, there's the black race. They're inferior. They're how many parts, what percentage of a white man? You guys know? I think some places were 2/3, some might have been like 3/5, right? And so, but somehow, one black man is not equal to one white man. Now for us, we're like, huh, so how about me as an Asian? Am I also not a full man compared to a white man? I mean, I question those, because it's like, you didn't talk about the Asians, and I'm trying to figure out, as I'm reading, history, American history, what am I? Like, would I have gone to the colored fountain if I was in the South? Those are questions that I had growing up. Those are existential questions for me. I don't know. Did you guys ever think about that? Or are you just like, oh, this is history. I just need to get an A. Maybe that's Asian. Okay, so I'll be like, okay, just going for the A. Okay. So we had different questions. Like this professor that's this pastor right here, I remember, like, oh yeah, Juneteenth. And then I was like, am I supposed to celebrate Juneteenth? Because I'm Asian. And he's like, and so he said one time, like, yeah, my wife came over and I was sitting on the couch, and I was deep in thought. My wife was like, what are you thinking? I was like, Ben asked this question, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Do we say yes? We are going to embrace our Asian brothers and sisters and say, yes, you can, celebrate Juneteenth or not. So that was kind of funny. This pastor, actually, at one time, he went to some rally, and right before he did, about a week beforehand, he actually discovered that there was a receipt in which his grandmother had, in which the family owned a slave. And so he's like, he was devastated. I saw it. I'm like, but that's not even you. You were not even alive. That's your. But he just felt it on his heart. So when he went to the rally, he said, I apologize. My family owned a slave. And I was like, wow, that's something to do, to acknowledge a wrong that was done on behalf of your family. And that's something that we have to learn as Christians too, sometimes a little differently. Like I've gone to share the gospel in San Francisco. We've asked people, have you heard of Jesus? And someone might say, I used to go to church, but like the pastor did something that was, like he said something and I didn't like it, so I haven't gone back. And we, on behalf of the pastor, we are now an advocate, and we say, oh, we're sorry for what the pastor said. And then we pray with them so that we can bring them back. Okay, so what can you do so sometimes it's not even stepping into somebody else who might be a different, it's just, you don't know, how can we be Christ to people to bring about forgiveness and resolution? What do you hear when a black man says, I'm tired? I know I'm going a little fast, but any thoughts? What would you think if you hear a black man, I'm tired? I'll wait, then I can drink water. Anything? Okay, okay. Good guess. How about the example I gave of the chief of police who actually said also that he's scared to go out because he's afraid that he might get shot by someone, by a police officer who's white, or that they're still looked down upon. I asked Port, the guy that was on the airplane, I was on the airplane with, and he's like, yeah, I've been pulled over just for being black. So they're tired. It was actually him and another girl on Facebook, also black. She was up in Seattle. She's down in New Orleans now. Other way around. Seattle, New Orleans from your perspective. All right. And then he's in California. They both liked the same post on Facebook. And I would never have seen that from Facebook if I had not known two black people who liked it. Okay. And then I read the girl's post, some other posts, and she was saying, black men, we love you. We love you. Okay? Like we know you're hurting, but we love you. And I'm like, I'm so confused. What are you talking about? You love all black men? Like, are you like the prostitute in John 4? Like, I was confused. Like, what do you mean? I love you. I'm like, I don't think that's what it is, but that's the first thought. I'm like, is she a prostitute? Like, what? And then I'm like, and so I had to sit there and really think about like what's going on. This is during BLM, and then I was like, she's trying to remind the black men, to be, I see you as an equal, white and black. You are seen, you're not invisible. So also during Urbana, they mentioned, if you see someone who's black, just say, hey, I see you. Because for blacks, a lot of the time, they've been taught to be, I mean, we're kind of used to that Asian culture, right? Like don't make eye contact a little bit and try to be like smaller, don't be so loud and everything, right? And but if you think of black culture, usually they are very noisier than Asians. Okay, and so it's, but then they're demoralized, dehumanized to the point where they feel like they're not seen. I think Asians actually like not being seen. Okay, because they're like, oh, they didn't see us, like good. But for blacks, that's why there's that like black pride. Okay, so it's not the pride that Jesus speaks against, but it's to help them understand that they are still human, they are still equal. That's what is, and but blacks can feel tired because they keep being mistreated more often than us. That's why I hate that term, we are white adjacent. That's a new term recently, because we are very similar to whites. Okay, like think about how we do, even as we sing the praise songs. Our praise songs imitate whites. I have another book which explains even about Asian preaching. And it says, if you turn the radio and you hear a preacher, you can tell if it's like a white guy from the South. You can tell it's a black guy, okay, from, I don't know, somewhere else, okay? You can tell if it's a white guy. You can't tell if it's an Asian guy unless he has a thick Chinese accent or Asian accent. But if he has no accent, and I've had that happen, even in San Francisco, I still had it where a white person, of all things, she's like, oh, your English is very good. Where did you learn it from? And I'm like, whew, okay, yes, I'm born in America. I learned it here. Like, I'm an American. But sometimes, I mean, older, it's usually older white ladies and then like grandmas. I'm like, okay, just be gracious. But that happens. But that's like the level of lack of understanding that we will probably experience as Asians. It's never going to be something like super negative, like getting shot by a police officer. So that's where, when you hear a black man say, I'm tired, that's actually what it means. Okay, it is true, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. This is how Jesus sees us. That doesn't mean that he's colorblind. I don't see color, okay? Because that's kind of confusing too, right? Like, wait, but I do have color, okay? What's our color? We're taught yellow, okay. Yeah, and so yeah, yellow, okay, so just embrace it, right? So Jesus does see that there's a uniqueness, because one day we're all going to be in heaven, right? With all ethnicities and nations, and it's going to be a wonderful place. How are we doing on time? Let me see. Okay. go through this quickly. Check out letter from jail. Okay, this is from MLK. This is when he was Birmingham. They imprisoned him unjustly, and he's like, it's not that long. Okay, you can download. You just go to the website, read through it. It'll help you understand a little more of what. I mean, we know what MLK stands for, but as you read it, you see the injustice that is done when the police officer. He's like, the police officer incorrectly jailed me, but you are happy and you're saying, good job, police officers, for doing your job. But I'm not even supposed to be here. Basically, that's what he's trying to say. So yeah, good job that you arrested people. You are doing your job, but in a sense, you did the wrong job. Let's see. Well, these are a bunch of questions from the book, but let's see. It partly talks about lamenting and like even white privilege. I don't like that term, but sometimes it's there. Now here's the one though for Chinese. Okay, I need to be talking actually more to the older Chinese. But anyways, there's an issue when Chinese look up to somebody who's older and white, thinking they are more intelligent or well-versed, perhaps, of like scripture or some topic than us, because we're Chinese, so somehow we're still a little inferior to whatever they might have learned. Because sometimes we could have even more education, but somehow we are actually still a little programmed sometimes to think, oh, someone who is white automatically is, because you see that it even happened in my church. I'm like, hey, this pastor wants up, great, because I know my church members are going to listen to this old white guy more than me, because I'm younger than him. And I also look even younger, because people always say I look way younger than I am. And so how old do you think I am? 43. Okay. Yeah. So 32. Whoa, thank you. But that's still the same zodiac animal, but way younger. So 12 years younger. So yeah, so that's the thing, is that's partly an issue. Like, have you guys seen that little picture of how like the Asian mom aging? Right? Yeah, so it's like a kid and a mom. No, it's a girl with kids, and then nothing changes, and all of a sudden menopause, boom, and then all of a sudden grandma, and she's this tall, right? And so it's like, yeah, I know that sometimes that's what happens to me. People think I'm younger, so they're not going to expect, they're not going to in some way respect me as much because I look younger, and I've experienced that where people, they do that. They think I'm still 31, and so that's the difficulty. Thank you. But okay, let's see. Let's speed up here. Frederick Douglass, another important person in U.S. history to listen about. Okay, so you can go to YouTube, look up autobiography on Douglass and listen to it. It's crazy the stuff that he went through, and he was so wise, and he was so smart as a kid. He didn't know how to read. So what do you think he did? There's no books, so he's a slave. So he happened when he was walking, he ran into a kid now and then, and he's like running an errand. And then he wanted to learn how, but he's like, he knew, I can't just go up to the kid and say, hey, can you teach me to read? And the kid's like, wait, no, I can't teach you to read. You're not supposed to be able to read, okay? It's only for like white people. And so instead he said, hey, I bet you can't read that. And the kid said, oh, yeah, I can, I'll show you. So the kid starts reading, and he looks like, okay, that's how you pronounce those words. That's what that sounds like. And that's how he learned how to read. And he's a better orator than me, okay, when I read his speeches. But he has a speech, again, talking about July 4th. Like, what is July 4th to me? A black person that did not know freedom on July 4th, right? So check it out. And the reason why he's not smiling is because he's an abolitionist. And he's trying to show there's still this tension of a lack of freedom for my black people. That's why he's like, That's why he's, yeah. Because I mean, there's many photos where people didn't smile, but those are superstitious reasons. Like, take a picture and somehow it'll suck your spirit out, and so that's why. Otherwise, when people sneeze, why do we say bless you? I try not to say bless you when people sneeze. Why? Because the idea is, achoo! Oh, my soul is coming out. Bless you. That's actually why we say the origins of saying bless you. It's superstitious. Okay, But I did have a white guy get really mad at me when he sneezed. I didn't say bless me. Say bless me. You need to bless me. Okay, bless you, like that. And he's not superstitious, but it was just part of the culture. Okay, all right. So yeah, it's really small. Yeah, we'll keep. I mean, we'll keep going because I'm behind on time. Here's another book, My Friend the Enemy, William Pennell. We don't have time. Okay. I don't know. I should have been 2 sessions. Anyways, maybe the next session I'll do William Pennell and I won't do the other ones. But I also want to address some Bible verses, okay? Because justice is in the Bible. Micah 6:8. He has told you, oh man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Amos 5. Seek the Lord and live, lest he break out like fire in the house of Joseph and devour with none to quench it for Bethel. O you who turn justice into wormwood. Okay, wormwood like wood that decay. And cast down righteousness to the earth. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. It's a call for justice that Amos is saying for his people who have been oppressed. Let's see. Yeah, Romans 13. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities. So here's the tension. Because this is what happened during the time of slavery is the pastor would preach. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, meaning your slave master, right? And those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. So you can misinterpret this and say this is the master doing wrath on a slave. Think about that. Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, good. We're at the halfway point, but we're not. Okay. All right. What history month are we wrapping up? Asian History Month, or yeah, API. Although I saw some places they dropped one of the A's because I think they didn't want to be Asian American Pacific Islander, so I think it's just Asian Pacific Islander now. Okay. Now during that One Blood thing, we're reading the book, and as we read the book, it's all about black and white conflict, and I'm like, what do I do? Or not even what do I do. Where am I in this book? Because it's all about black and white. Like, where do I do as an Asian, as a Chinese? How do I tell, in a way, my story? How does my story fit in? Am I not involved in American history? Are we not involved in American history, or are we? We're not? Oh, later. Okay, but so how are we involved in later American history? What did some Chinese do when they came? Railroads. Now, I remember being your age and like, oh yeah, Chinese built railroads. Okay, what's it to me? I don't know them. They're not my relatives. Okay, but keep that in mind. I didn't even go, wait, what? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I saw this and I'm like, I like it. I'm going to post it. Okay, because this is during BLM. Okay. So it's like, in a way, because sometimes we can identify with white culture, right? Sometimes we can identify with black culture in different ways, like white, and then sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're even more oppressed. Have you guys heard about like how in Harvard they have different standards of grading? When you apply to Harvard and you're Asian, automatically you get negative, I think 40 points deducted from your score because we're Asian. But it makes sense because otherwise Harvard would be only Asians. Okay, pretty much. All right, but so we get a negative 40, whites get a 0, Hispanic, brown basically, they get like a positive 30 or 40, and blacks get a positive 50. Okay, because they're trying to make sure that the people that are in the student body is spread out. The problem though is if you bring somebody in who doesn't have the academic merit, they're still going to fail out, right? But what do you do if you don't want to look? So they're trying to not look racist by having a diverse group, but by doing that, they're actually in a way still doing affirmative action and being in a way racist, right? So it's hard. I mean, I feel sorry for Harvard at the same time, like, oh, That's not good, that whole negative, positive points thing. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Far East Deep South. Oh, this is a great documentary. Check it out, or maybe you can watch it at your church or something. Far East Deep South. What do you think this is about? Asians in the South. So he's among the cotton fields. Oh, let's see. Can I go over a little bit? Is it okay? Okay, good. All right. So this guy, he grew up, did not know his grandfather. Whenever he asked his dad wouldn't talk about his grandfather. Little did he know, they decided, you know what, Dad, let's just go. Okay, we'll take our families, we'll go down to Mississippi. Apparently, Grandpa was in Mississippi. We'll go check it out. So they go check it out. They're just thinking, oh, we'll just drive over, fly over, rent a car, just drive around, look for cemeteries, look for Grandpa's gravestone. That's it. Okay. Instead, they find a local university that had a Chinese museum, history museum in there. They talk to the historian and find his grandfather's Bible in there. Okay. Later on, when he's talking to a mayor in one of the towns that his family was in, he's like, I'm so thankful that you came. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm looking for my history. I'm thankful that you told me. It's like, no. And this is where I'm proud, to be Chinese. So it's okay to be proud. Okay. The black mayor said, this is the first ex-slave town, okay, in America. And then, when the Chinese were there in Mississippi, your dad was a business owner, and he actually sold his stuff on credit. They didn't have credit cards back then, okay? Remember, everything was just like pennies and nickels, all right? But they didn't have any money because they were sharecroppers. So they only got money if they helped in collecting the harvest. Well, in the 30s, during the Great Depression, was there any money? Was there any harvest? There's no harvest, so then there's no money because there's no work. So the black town would have died and been gone. But the Chinese were like, take it, we'll put it up, we'll give you credit. Later on, when you have money, pay me back. I was like, yeah, good Chinese, right? Another story was that at one point, sadly, the white church had a building, and then the blacks also wanted to worship. And so they say, hey, can we borrow, rent, whatever, use your building? The whites said no. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll go ask the Chinese, hey, can we use your building? Like, oh yeah, you can use your building. Yes, they knew better. The Chinese knew better. And I was like, and this is unity, Christian unity, in which the Chinese, and they even said that. The black said, if we go into the white store, sometimes we get eyes and stuff, but we felt like we were amongst our brothers and sisters, like we were treated nicely. It's also Chinese, like culture, but like they were treated more nicely when they went to a Chinese store. Okay, although sometimes it's funny because you hear about it where there's like a road, and on one side is one side of the road is for blacks in the little town, the other side is white. Okay, so the stores, and so the Chinese, I don't think they were trying to start a monopoly, but they had like a grocery store on both sides because blacks don't go to one side and whites don't go to the other. And so there were stories of how like they're at one side and the person's like, oh, yeah, we don't have any salt. And they walk over to the other side, grab some salt, and bring it back over to the other side, and then I'll sell you the salt. And it's just crazy. Here's another one. You think I am lying. Okay. Have you heard of a laughing barrel? Humor me. What do you think a laughing barrel is? Again, in this context of little town in the South. Not really. I want to give you a yes, but no. It was inappropriate for a black man to LOL. So if somebody said a funny joke to you, I'll just use this one. Have you heard the one about the Teidan? Inside joke. Okay. It's for Cantonese people. Anyways, okay. So if he was black, he would have to look around, find where the barrel was, and shove his head inside the barrel and then laugh. Yeah. I heard this from, I think it was Dr. Earl Crawford. Yeah, so that's what racism was like. It's better now, but there's still racism today. And that's where sometimes we have to speak up. It's like, hey, that's not appropriate. Sometimes you have to even, We have to stand up even for our own Asianness. You got to be wise about it, but it's like, you know what, that's still not appropriate. Like, I'm still trying to think, do I talk to that church member where it's like, oh, your English is something, like, I don't know, like, but it's one of those things. But I'm just so happy that I got to hear about his story, because his story, in a way, is our story. Okay. That's Francis Chan. He's at the AAPI stuff in early 2021 down in San Francisco, addressing how it very much appears like our Asians are ignored. And especially in San Francisco, when you hear about an Asian life being taken and no penalty. There was one story, I think it was Christmas 2020. It was a black guy driving down Market Street, which is the main street in San Francisco, runs over a Japanese girl who was just there as a tourist, kills her, and he gets off scot-free. And we're like, this is not right. Or do you guys hear about the Thai older grandpa who was just walking in front of his house, and then a black guy with mental illness, but goes over, jump kicks him like Bruce Lee, basically. He hits his head, and then he dies. The video footage is actually a friend of mine from his security camera. That's how close we are to some of these crimes and hurts. And sometimes we have to speak up, okay? But be wise about when you speak up. Okay, there we go. This is Russell Chung. He's a professor at SF State. And he wrote At Home in Exile. And what he talked about when he was there, which stood out to me, is that we are going to be perpetual foreigners in our own country. Unless, of course, you intermarry, then people don't know where your kids are, right? But otherwise, if you continue to marry within Asians and your children are still Asians, people are going to assume, like they assumed of me, like that I was a foreigner who did not speak any English. Okay, here's another funny one. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm walking down the stairs to be a TA, and I'm thinking, oh, should I prank these students in Oklahoma? Should I come out with a really thick Chinese accent and then just scare them to death? Like, okay, today we are going to do... And I didn't do it. Okay, a few weeks later, one of the students comes up to me and he's like, you know, when I saw you walking down, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to understand anything that he says. And then you open your mouth and you spoke English. I was like, oh, I'm so thankful you can speak English. And so he already had that prejudice, not prejudice, but just this assumption, but then I broke it. And sometimes that's what we're here to do. We're here to kind of break some of those assumptions. So don't think like it's painful. Sometimes it's to help people expand their mind, okay? But yeah. Okay, I created a list during One Blood, so if you want, it's a bunch of videos about some funny videos, some not so funny videos. There's a video in there about a black man who's a musician, and then ends up that he talks to one of the leaders of the KKK, and ends up befriending him. He even goes to the rallies. Okay, they're burning crosses, they're all wearing the KKK white teepee hat. Okay, in the end, because he was that friend that just sat there, didn't go like, oh yeah, KKK, but he sat there and he was able to befriend him. The guy's like, this doesn't make any sense anymore because you're black, but I don't have any prejudice towards you. And gave his, like, what is the Grand Dragon Master uniform to whatever, I forget what it's called. Is it Dragon, Grand Master something, right? And gave it to him. And then he opened this wardrobe, and he had several of them because he had just simply gone and befriended them. But it was because they themselves were just like, they didn't know, they've been taught, okay, just always think less of black people until you have to go out and reach out. And there's more to that story. Okay, now, real quick, have anybody seen Blackish? Oh, okay. If it's a little too much, because there is a bit of vulgarity, this one, I just discovered it a few months ago on Netflix, okay, Family Reunion. There is an episode where they talk about Ouija boards, so skip that one, okay? But it's funny because the story is the dad's an ex-NFL Seahawk football player, but the idea is that their family grew up in Seattle, and then they get transported, I forget where it was now. I think it was like maybe somewhere near Columbus, Ohio, but somewhere where it's very black. And so the kids are now getting an education on Black history because they did not get that in Seattle because Seattle is so white. Okay, and so then they're like, oh, these things happen. Oh, this is what it means when, and so it was almost like, are you really Black? Like that's what happened in the show because like I'm Black, like because they didn't understand like all the segregation that was going on between Blacks and white in the past. So that one's a pretty good one. There's always lots of movies that talk about racism. So if you ever have a chance, watch them. I've already had my sons try to show them to my sons to understand. I mean, like, this is a great one, right? Race, have you seen it? Okay. It's what's his name? Lewis. Sorry, Jesse Owens. The other one is Lewis. Jesse Owens ends up going to, during the 1936 Berlin Olympics, and he's competing against the Nazis. Okay, that was the main thing because at one point he's competing against like the Nazi top athlete. I won't give away what happens, but you can probably assume, guess what happens. Okay, all right. Anybody see Fresh Off the Boat? Okay. Now, do you think it's kind of funny? I didn't finish, but that's funny. Okay. Who's not Chinese in this? The dad. Did you guys know that? He's Korean. But the story is of a Chinese, Taiwanese family, I think, from New York. They go down to Florida, like Orlando or something. Okay, or Kim's Convenience. That's another good one. Okay, now there is some vulgarity and more adult topics. Okay, and really this one is like watch the first season and watch the episode that they go to Taiwan and then skip everything else. But Kim's Convenience is another one where it's because that's kind of like this is almost. If you think about, well, yeah, you guys weren't even born yet. So you guys hear about like the LA riots? Okay, what happened during the LA riots? So some of it, just throw it out.
There was like Black people rioting.
Uh-huh.
Like Koreans, they like boarded up their stores and they were like patrolling their streets.
Okay, good. Yeah, so they were actually called rooftop Koreans. They sat on their rooftop. These are guys that were ex-military finding out that blacks were looting the area. But what happened was there was a convenience store owner, okay? And she had already been robbed twice. So she bought a gun. Gun got stolen, had a hairpin trigger put into it. A girl, she assumed, was trying to shoplift. Somehow there was a tussle, and then the gun went off, whether she pulled it out, but the girl died. So the blacks like, again, we are being abused. And then so they went against the Koreans. Okay, but the Koreans like, we're gonna fight back. So they got their own like little radio station, and they're like, okay, Koreans, okay, go to this store, buy guns. Okay, go here. This is how you board up your store because you don't want it to get looted. Because why? But now we live in a country where there are police. How come? Why do the Koreans have to sit on the top of the rooftops, okay, with their guns? Because the police all went up to Beverly Hills to protect Beverly Hills, and nobody went to Beverly Hills. Yeah, messed up. Okay, so there's, but I mean that's a little less about it, but it's funny. Okay, even this one. Okay, one of the aunties at my old church in Seattle, that was her nephew, and I remember a friend told me, it's like when he came to visit one time, why are you playing a Korean? Because he's playing Harry Kim, but he's Garrett Wang, he's Chinese. Hollywood couldn't tell the difference. All right, we can tell the difference, right? Oh, hopefully you can. Okay. Oh, here's a funny story. Galileo High School, Christian Club. I asked the kid, hey, what's your last name? Is it Lee or Kim? Because you look Korean. He's like, oh, no, I'm Chinese. My last name is like Chang. I'm like, okay. At the end of the year, he comes in, you guys won't believe this. Like, what? My parents just told me I'm adopted. I'm Korean. I'm like, yes, I can tell, yes. So, okay, some other stuff. Joy Luck Club. That's an older movie based in San Francisco about just like the turmoil that can happen amongst family, coming to the U.S. Asian Americans. This is a great PBS. Watch it. I mean, just what they talk about, like how Asians, like there was one actress that now they're going to try to put, I think, on either the quarter or a $1 bill or something. Hollywood would cause her to die in every movie. There was even one where she just spontaneously died for no reason. But for some reason, they just like, yeah, you just have to die in every one of our movies. And it's like, what? But that's in a way some sort of prejudice, right? that like the Asian woman has to die, and so they would just kill her off every movie. Yeah, I can't remember her name right now. Oh, but she's right there. Okay. So we're at the Young Museum. These are my kids. It was a free day, and they're like, okay, like just sketch something that's in the museum. But thankfully, it was free. I went in. This is the Sacramento rail station. Sacramento is actually the capital of California. Okay, but anyway, so you have the stagecoach. Oh, what do you see? It's kind of hard to see. But what do you see going on? Do you see yourself in this? No. Why would you, right? So I saw this photo, this painting, I want to say like 13 years ago, and I walked by, and I guess it was the Holy Spirit, because I was like, I need to stop, and I need to look at this. I need to admire it. And I looked around, and then I'm seeing, okay, this is kind of funny. This lady's suitcase fell open, her clothes are falling out. Okay, there's another rich lady that's coming out of the stagecoach. Oh, there's some poor people over here. Let me focus on the poor people. Okay. All right. Oh, I zoomed in a little more. Okay. But if you zoom in too much, sometimes you'll miss what this German painter saw and tried to describe. So here are those poor people. Do you see yourself in there yet? I'll do one more. Right in the middle of the picture. There's a coolie with a hat, with a stick, and a bucket, 2 buckets. So he was actually being very historical, acknowledging that there were Chinese even here. In the Sacramento, can't see it? Okay, here. He even kind of faded out some of the stuff so that there's a kind of a silhouette right there. I was like, whoa. I watch other people. They're like, oh, okay. And then they just walk by. I was like, I know the secret. Okay, there's one more secret. Let's see if you can see it. This should be a little more easier to see. There's a black man over there, and I don't know what he's doing, pointing at somebody like making move stuff. But the guy was still, I don't know what he's doing. Okay, but he's in the picture. You see it? Yeah, okay, good. All right. You were squinting, so I wasn't sure. And that made me think of another funny event that happened in Daly City. My Filipino friend went to go get his driver's license, and then he's standing there, and then the lady's like, open your eyes. He's like, they are open. Anyways, okay. Also in the museum, there was this, I didn't know about this, but this is the last moments of John Brown, another abolitionist situation where at one point they had struck him on the head, and then they bring him to court to try him. I'm like, is that messed up or not? Okay, so the history is there if we're looking for it. Let's see what else I have. Oh, this is a little more for you to kind of understand how different people think and view the world differently in terms of even missions. So this is actually volume 1, number 1, April 1979. I wasn't even born yet. All right. And so this is the Fellowship of Asian Chinese Evangelicals. It's based out of Oakland. Pastor William Ng, he did this. So this little diagram right here, I'm going to zoom in on it. This is Perspectives of the Great Commission. This is, they use Caucasian, oh well. Okay, well, white, when we think of, we need to go, Matthew 28:18-20, send the gospel to the ends of the earth, right? But it starts Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth, right? So it's like community, state, country, world. Overseas born, this is how they see it. This is how your parents might see it if they are first generation. OBC community. ABCs in Chinese in Asia. Chinese everywhere, and then other people all over the world. We are I think you guys are ABCs, and most of you are. Okay, ABCs in his community are hers, right? State, U.S., world including Asia, and yeah. Okay, so that's how our brain looks at even evangelism and missions differently. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see. Oh, this one. Okay, so this was just last week. This professor was talking about Latino culture. And so he's explaining how, and the reason why I show this is because even for us, in some ways, this is how we need to look at it as Asians or as Chinese. okay, is that there's the nuclear or monocultural Latino. So like in San Francisco, you could speak Cantonese and never learn English, and you will actually survive because you can just engage with just in amongst your Asian, other Chinese people, and the grocery store and the local everything. Okay, so there are some people who only think in that nuclear monocultural language. Okay, then there's the bicultural Latino. So you could be like bicultural Chinese, right? So that's where many of us, if we're ABCs, or even sometimes our OBCs, you're able to kind of go into one culture, but then go into another, right? We can eat American burgers and fries, but we're just as comfortable eating fried rice, okay, or whatever you want it, right? But there are some, when you ask them, like I think I was telling Carter, I discovered that I asked my Latino brothers, hey, let's go get Indian food. Like, ooh, I can't, no, I've tried it, right? And so it's just kind of interesting, like, but I mean, who likes Indian food? I love Indian food. I love all foods, right? So, but that's where we're a little different. We usually will eat everything, except first generation doesn't like cheese, right? Okay, and so, but we're second gen stuff. So we're the bicultural, but then there's different ideas of like there's a marginal. So you don't know that much Spanish, so English is like you can kind of get by. Whereas the bicultural, you're kind of good in either one. You can talk to grandpa and grandma in Chinese, but you can also talk in English. Then there's the fleeing Latino, okay? Sorry, Chinese Latino. But I'm kind of, the ideas are very much the same in that, like the fleeing Latinos, like fleeing Chinese, like some might be like, I don't want anything to do with my Chinese heritage. I just want to be known as like white or something. And that happens. He said that even in Florida, there are some Latinos that instead of being Latino, they actually look black. They got the cornrows at the barber shop. They speak like just, you listen to them like, wait, there's no Hispanic accent to the way you talk. You're just talking like somebody like black people, but when I look at you, you're Hispanic. Okay, so sometimes there'll be the fleeing that wants to be of a different culture. Then there are some that after they did that, they return. There are some that might even assimilate. And then there's even, and so there's different ones. And then this kind of, it's a crazy because it describes how like there's a returning, they go into the nuclear, and then there's the immigrants, there's a temporary immigrant that then goes back. And I was like, wow, this is complex. Yeah. All right. This is the Tan Fran Mall. It's near the SFO airport if you've ever been to San Francisco. Okay, it's in San Bruno. Has anybody been? Have you ever been? Okay. So this is actually, okay, sorry. Let me go back. Okay. What happened to Japanese during World War II in America? Internment camps. That's where the internment camp was, at this mall. But they wanted to honor, because it's like, do you want to just leave in a bunch of internment camp buildings? And no, so they turned to a mall, but then they put a memorial right outside at the BART station, the Bay Area Rapid Transit. And so there's two little kids right there with some suitcases in a statue, okay? And this is the memorial so that you can still go see it. Oh, that's my magician friend in the red shirt. And I was dropping him off at the airport, and I took him there, and he's like, I didn't even know this was here. Okay, so yeah, it's really right next to the mall. There's Target. But you can see that it's explaining like that the Japanese in San Francisco were taken here and interned, and they were not even properly built. They were actually stables. They were horse stables. They could smell the manure, the urine of the horses that were in the wood or had fallen through the cracks. Okay, so that's because they were literally inside horse stalls that just quickly, I don't think they even did too much to them. And so the families would stay in them. Yeah, the wooden structure represents the horse stalls that many families were forced to live in, just steps from where you are now standing. The government did not build enough temporary barracks to accommodate 8,000 people, so families were assigned to the recently vacated horse stalls. Decades later, many who lived in a horse stall for months could still recall the smell of urine and horse manure that rose up through the floorboards. Can you imagine that happening to you? You might say, oh, I'm Chinese. Oh, but guess what? Maybe back then, people couldn't tell the difference between Chinese and Japanese. So you would still experience hatred. And that hatred can go back forth and forth. But as believers, okay, we need to drop it. And I think that's about it. I'm almost done. Yeah, okay. So my last story is this. When I was in Japan, we visited a family, because there was a homestay student's family. And so we were in, I think it was Nagoya, Japan. And we go in, very Japanese house. There's a Shiba Inu in the front guarding. It actually bit me a few days later because I thought it liked me and it didn't yet. Oh no, it was just in sentry mode. But we went in, and the family, the parents, started bowing to us and saying sorry. And I was like, Dad, like, what's going on? It's like, I think they're saying sorry for World War II. And the reason why I say that is because there are still some Chinese today that will say, Japan never apologized. No country is ever going to apologize for the wrong. Well, very infrequently will they. Japan, Jesus is going to come first, okay? But this Japanese family did. And I think we need to remember that. And so I tell others, like, yeah, they're not going to, but they did. They knew it was wrong. So sometimes we need to speak up and say, maybe some of the things that maybe Chinese did to somebody else, we need to step in and say, yeah, that was not right, okay? But I share that because if your parents are saying that, or grandparents, like, well, depending on the situation, if you can speak up, but just like, let's seek after unity, okay? Because otherwise, we're just going to hold on to these bitter roots. Oh, last thought real quick. The Bible talks about forgiveness, right? So if somebody wrongs you, do you have to wait for them to apologize? Did you know that the word apology is never in the Bible? Because we don't have to wait for an apology. Okay? We forgive. That's what we're called to do as Christians. Good? Okay, I'm done. And there's a bunch of books here. All right, so thank you. Oh. Wow, and that's okay. Not bad. 75 minutes.